Is there a doctor in the house?
Doctor, you have a visitor in the main lobby.
Hello and welcome to today's Talk to the Doc podcast. I'm your host, Steve the Dr. Meek, and the doctor is in. So welcome back to the show. I'm glad you're here, and especially if you've ever wondered, what's my business actually worth? Or how do I make it worth even more? I'm happy because today we'll be digging into conversation that's overdue for probably a lot of you out there. Our guest today is someone who's not just passionate about mergers and acquisitions, but about making sure small and medium-sized businesses don't leave value on the table simply because they don't know what to look for. I actually try to think of him as kind of a business physician. See what I did there? Physician, doctor, business physician. Okay, that wasn't that good. But coming in for a full checkup before you make big decisions about growth, succession, or selling, here comes our friend Terry. Terry Chevalier is a certified partner with Mastery Partners. He is a recovering corporate executive. We're going to have to dig into that. Who now works with business owners, CEOs, and other leaders to help them maximize the value of their business. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about that, how too many SMBs are not getting their full checkup to understand the value and how to maximize it. Terry, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great, Steve. Well, thanks so much for the invite. Great to see the doctor and be with you today.
It's good to have you in office. We can do so much more for you if we can have that great conversation with you and find out what ails you. But before we get started too far, I just got to know, recovering corporate executive. Can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Oh, sure. Probably like a lot of people, I've always been trying to figure out what is I want to be when I grow up. And that's been a continual thing, even as I am here later in life. But I had a sort of a different career path than a lot of people. I actually was in the government for 10 years before I decided to move in a different direction. And I first did some consulting work. But then I spent a lot of time working with corporate clients, Fortune 10, Fortune 500, and I was actually in an executive role with a corporation here in Dallas. And it's wonderful in terms of there's some very big, meaty challenges you can work on. But at the same time, I really miss this ability to work with small businesses because you really can make an impact. Sometimes when you're in a corporate role, making the ship move is a little bit difficult. You're moving the Titanic, but in a small business, you're nimble, you're fast. And so I like to just consider myself, I'm recovering from that corporate role, coming back in and working with the people I love in small business.
I definitely think that's, for me, a bonus. There's obviously a lot of opportunities for cybersecurity expert and large entities, but you just feel closer to the patient when you're able to impact a smaller organization and actually have people say thank you or look like they appreciate your help or feel like you've illuminated them in a way that that they really wanted.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you said it. Small business owners, very real people, very real issues. When you solve a problem for them, you help the patient out. You're helping them, you're helping their employees, you're helping their family. And it's a very direct level of impact, and I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Go-Giver, that talks about, different ways of servant leadership. And to me, that's it boils down to the law of compensation is how many people you help and how deeply you help them. And I think that being able to work with small business really gives you that opportunity.
Yeah, I actually just won an industry award for community impact. And it was like this IT industry contest, which celebrated like the top producers and partners and those kinds of things. But I love that I actually won for community impact because that felt like that giving back that you're talking about, that sense of purpose beyond just going out there and helping an organization with their computers. The stuff that I do personally, the things I do via the business, the things that we do as a business, all those together, kind of make me feel like my place on earth is impactful.
That's wonderful, Steve. I mean, congratulations to you and the entire team for that kind of an award. It really does mean a lot. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, we kind of think about, not to get macabre, but, we are in a doctor's office. And so at some point, we will leave this earth. And what, it's always that question is like, what are people going to say at your eulogy?
Right.
How are they going to describe you? And these are the things that truly make an impact for folks. So
I do.
hats off to you.
As I've gotten older, I do think about that a lot more, but I think a lot of that's because I'm always so injured playing basketball. I just can't give it up. Playing basketball 4 times a week sometimes. And, I like to joke around that if I have less than 3 injuries, I'm going to be playing. But that's always because I always have at least 3 injuries.
Well, doctors are the worst patients. So
that's right.
That would make sense. That makes sense.
Enough about me. You're in the office. I'd like to do your checkup. I always start off with 3 vitals, trying to understand a little bit more about you and, what's going on with you. So let's start off with the pulse. Can you give me a sense of kind of the state of the industry from your mind, what kind of trends are going on?
Sure. And I think, in the context of, what I do, the big thing that we're looking at from a pulse is that in any year, roughly 250,000 small businesses across the United States try to exit.
Wow.
And
okay.
That's defined as you've got more than one employee. So this is not necessarily solopreneurs, but the stats are going to be the same. But up to 100 million in revenue. And I know the vast majority of that is sitting from about 2 to 10 million in revenue. That's where most small business sits. And so that's a stat that there's a lot of people that are out there. And frankly, when we look at, the trends of boomers, finally, sort of reaching that retirement point and moving on, that number could actually increase, as we go forward.
Now, do you think the economy, do you think it's going to impact it one way or the other, or is it too soon to tell?
Well, I think it is. I mean, there's one of the things that's been affecting the M&A community over the past several years has been interest rates.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people have to borrow in order to purchase a company or make an investment. And the interest rates have been very high. The thing is across industry, and this is probably even more at the high end of the market. So we get into large businesses and things like that. What we call the bid-ask spread is very high. So bid-ask spread basically means how much do I think my company is worth if I'm the seller? And if I'm the buyer, how much do I think your company's worth? And there's a spread between those. And unfortunately, the spread has been too big to get a lot of deals done. Now, if we see some things change in the economy, we see interest rates come down subtly, the values are, what people are going to be willing to pay is going to change. So we could see that come through. But I would also say that one of the unique things about small business is that many times, I won't say it's completely immune, but there are portions of it that are going to happen either way. If you got a boomer and they need to retire, they need to retire, and trying to time the market isn't the best thing. It's like when you're ready to go. And so that's why I think you're still going to see somewhere in that order of 250,000 are going to at least make the attempt.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I can totally see that. I actually live a little bit of that because what you call bid ask, I call my hotness scale. And I feel like I'm really hot, but nobody else does. So take that for what you will. It's I understand.
Wait, we're talking about your business, right, Steve? No, okay.
Oh, yeah. We're only talking about business. That's it's not about me. It's never about me. Well, let's get into the heart rate. What performance metrics do you think speak to you right now?
Well, this is a metric we've seen. We've done some work in the past where we looked at this 250,000 people who had tried to sell themselves, and asked, how many of them were actually able to get across the line? How many were able to successfully transition? And we found it was a whopping 17%.
Wow.
So not even 1 in 5 are able to get across that line. And there are a lot of reasons why, but they kind of boil down to unrealistic expectations on what my value actually is. And the other one is owner dependency. The business cannot run without the owner.
Gotcha.
And then there's a third piece that's sort of that sneaks up on people and they don't think about it. It's your identity is wrapped up in your business. And if you haven't done things to begin to paint the picture of what's next for you and you're taking active steps, it feels like you're giving something up. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I talk to business owners who are going through a sale and they have that 3 a.m. wake up with a cold sweat. Like, what am I doing? What's next? What am I going to do? And sometimes that can cause them to stop a transaction, So that's really one of the critical things. I mean, we've got to get that number higher.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see, if you're a principal in an organization, if you're proud of your organization, then absolutely your identity is wrapped up into it. It's like giving up a piece of yourself or giving up a child or a dog, which is even worse, just something that you're so close to, spent so much time grooming and preparing and, kind of living and breathing the culture. I can see where that would be difficult.
Absolutely. And it really is something we see.
You'd almost need to, I know I read a book about how to break a habit. And one of the things I said was replace it with another habit. You'd really have to, if I'm hearing what you're saying, you really need to have that habit in mind ahead of time that, hey, if you're going to right. stop this and not want to kill yourself in 6 months, then, it's important to figure out what you are going to do next.
And I think that especially for business owners, let's think about every day you've come into the business and you've had things to solve every day. If you're on the other side of that, what's going to fill that void for you? Because sometimes you'll talk to people, well, I'm going to retire. Well, that's great. What are you going to do? I'm going to play golf. Okay. Is that going to provide the fulfillment for you? I mean, I'd love to go play golf too. But you're going to want that fulfillment. You're going to need to think through what is that thing? What is that set of things that you're going to do that provides that level of fulfillment for you? Because without that, there's not a pull. There's not that pull to pull you out of the business.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the other metric I like to think about is weight. When I think of weight, I think of strategies. What strategies should leaders know about or be thinking about?
Well, I think the strategy here is you need to start thinking about that plan earlier than you think you need to. Sort of a statistic that goes along with that is that if you take, going back to that corporate world that I talked about earlier, so a W-2 employee, the vast majority of W-2 employees, their net worth is made up of, their home, retirement accounts, 401ks, pensions. So 80% is tied up in those. For business owners, 80% of your net worth is tied up in your business. So your ability to fund whatever that is that's next, to provide for the family, that is really essentially as part of that exit. So the strategy here is you need to get a lot earlier than you think to start working on that piece of the puzzle, because it's not done overnight. It takes time. It takes time to prepare your business. It takes time to prepare yourself. It takes time to prepare your family for what that is. So that's really the fundamental thing, is you've got to work on an exit strategy. Even if you don't pull the trigger, you will be in a better position. An example I can give you, one of the other partners has this great example, and I was like, I'm stealing this. This is a great idea, a great way to articulate it. Imagine you're training for a triathlon.
Okay.
And for 3 months, you are watching what you eat, you're counting your macros, you're getting your times, you're getting up at the crack of dawn, you're getting into the pool and doing your swimming, you're doing your bike, you're getting your jogging in, you're doing your recovery. And the day of the race comes and you say, I'm not going to run. You are still in the best shape of your life at that point in time. The world is your oyster. So if you do that work, it still has benefit.
Awesome. Yeah, I think sometimes, I always like to refer back to The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, that, if you always looking at just a goal, you're not always focused on that incremental progress and getting better and doing all those things that you could or should be doing.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great example.
Now, getting into the doctor's visit, I guess with Mastery Partners, M&A, what are you guys trying to solve? I mean, what is so important to you in what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about Mastery, but I'll also talk a little bit about sort of, why I'm so passionate about this. I mean, at Mastery Partners, we're trying to solve that 17% problem.
Okay.
And the way we solve that is helping business owners to maximize the value of their business so that then they can achieve the dream exit they want, whatever it is. And that dream exit doesn't mean necessarily selling to a third party through a transaction. It could be transitioning it to family. It could be selling it to your employees or to management. Or frankly, the other thing we see is owners who just say, I want to step back. I want to become an owner investor. I just want this asset to continue to produce value, but I'm going to let other people run it. And so whatever those options are, that's what we are trying to solve, because we found that that's sort of that's a gap that's been in the market. There's a lot of really fantastic brokers and bankers who, when you raise your hand, say, I'm ready, they will do everything they can to get you ready to sell and do as best they can to get you the top dollar. But there's nobody really working for the years prior to that to help you prepare for that moment so that you're getting top dollar and you're able to achieve it and you're happy at the end. There's another stat. This is probably another heart rate kind of stat that we don't talk about. There was a study, and I believe it was PwC did it. When business owners sold, they checked with them a year later. 75% of them were profoundly unhappy that they had left. Because again, they hadn't prepared for what was next. But yeah, that's kind of Mastery and why we're trying to do it. I mean, if I can, I'll tell you though, the thing that got me, I go back to when I was doing some independent consulting, and I was working with a couple, and they had called me and they needed help because they were trying to sell. And this is before I was working with Mastery. I was on my own, and they called me up. They were like, I need a pro forma. And I was like, well, what do we need a pro forma? What do you need a pro forma? And, a pro forma financial statement is something that sort of projects like what your business should look like. Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, they don't get it. Who? The buyers. Okay, what's going on? And we dug into it, and I said, look, I need to come up and talk to you. I need to see the business and figure this out. So I went up there and I met with them. The day I show up, the husband doesn't even show up. The wife drives in. And for the next hour and a half, I became a marriage counselor. Hearing the frustration of they had tried to sell multiple times. I think they were at the end of their rope. They were very frustrated. Then the husband comes in, and I could tell right off the bat, he just wanted to be in the business. He didn't really want to run it. He was happy just doing the work of the business. And long story short is, I eventually kind of helped them through the one issue that they were stuck over. They eventually sold. I'm not going to claim it was because of anything I really did. I think that it was just the events. But when I walked out of that, I said, there has got to be a better way. There has to be a way to help owners so they don't get into this where they fail again and again and again, that they put their marriage, at risk. They put their families at risk and all this. So that's what really drove me to get into this. And then I connected with Tom Bronson over at Mastery Partners, and I loved his approach. And, here I am today.
Gotcha. So I heard you talk a little bit about business value. When you engage with somebody, or, when you think about someone going through looking for an exit or something, what's the first place you think you usually see opportunities that they're missing?
The number one thing is owner dependency, without a doubt. And to solve owner dependency, it requires a lot of work in terms of making sure you've got a management team. It requires a lot of work transitioning customer relationships. It requires a lot of work in documenting all of your processes and training your team to it. Because if businesses that are so owner dependent are frankly not sellable, there's other things that can drop your value. But if you don't solve that thing, you may not even have something to be able to sell. Tom tells the story that he's had, unfortunately, people call him like, state attorneys say, hey, this business owner passed away and the family would like to sell it. And he starts probing with some questions and come to find out all the customer relationships were with the deceased. The only person who knew how to do anything was the deceased. And by the time you're done, there's nothing to sell. There's no asset there. So that's really kind of the main thing. And I don't mean to be depressing on it, but that is really reality when we see out in the market.
Well, I think it's really more of business owner adulting, if you will, not scary judgment that, just kind of what we're talking about, this whole podcast is something like getting a physical. And, what I'm hearing you say is that the M&A prep is a little bit like getting a physical. There's going to be good stuff. There's going to be bad stuff, and there's going to be stuff that you don't want to hear.
That's true. That's very true. And it's our job to be objective, and you can't fix something if you're unaware of it.
So do you feel like a lot of your efforts are just focused on the financial or operational side, or do you feel like the emotional side is a big part of what you guys end up working with?
That's a great question. I mean, we work on all kinds of elements, but the reality is, and I always tell people this, is that businesses are run by people. We are emotional creatures. We make decisions emotionally. We think we don't make decisions emotionally, but yes, we do. And so we do spend a lot of time with that. And I find that for business owners who are really kind of slogging through things every day, sometimes when we're just able to come in, monthly and sit down with them, we just can help pull them out emotionally. Hey, refocus. Here's the thing in front of you. This is what we need to do. Recognize the successes that you've had. They beat them. Business owners are the worst about beating themselves up. We're not where we need to be. We haven't done it. Whereas we're actually looking at the scorecard and we're tracking. We're like, hey, you know what? You actually accomplished this many things off the plan. That's worth a celebration. So I think it's a very fair point. And I would say a lot of what we do is being that counselor, that advisor, and coach, helping them cope into that next level. But I'll also be honest, Steve. I mean, it takes a village,
sure,
to do this. And so sometimes, I know clients who will go have a therapist. That's great. They may have a family, counselor. That's great. That is all part of what you need, whatever your situation is. The goal is the goal. However we get there is what we need to do.
Sure. Now, in your mind, is there a big difference between what a traditional business coach would do and what you as an M&A coach would do?
They're probably looking at a little different pieces. So business coaches a lot of times are saying, look, you tell me what the goal is of, I'm trying to get to this level of business, or I'm trying to solve this issue with client or my employees, or I'm trying to figure out how to drive sales. So a business coach can help you in a lot of these pieces. Ours is a very specific goal. I'm going to exit my business. And here's the point. Every business owner exits their business at some point. It's either planned or unplanned. Sure. Planned ones tend to go better. So we have a laser-like focus on helping them to get to that point. Now, the side benefit is the things we're going to coach you to fix, to get ready for that, just make the business run better. They make it more valuable. They make your employees happier. Because what you're doing is you're creating a transferable asset that runs without you. If the engine is running like that without you, it's a great business.
Sure.
That's a super business.
Now, you mentioned before that some people are maybe not exiting, just staying on, maybe semi-retired or not selling or whatever. Has that been going on a lot, or is that a newer trend, or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's interesting. I think that there's a little bit of a generational effect there. Mm-hmm. So boomers have traditionally, their identity is so wrapped up in the business that it's hard for them to see outside of that. And what I see is a lot of times that they just get ground down because they're managing everything. When we come in and we work with them and they're able to actually step back from the business, they're like, well, this is fun again. This is not hard. I would like to continue in that kind of role. And so that's one of the things we've seen is a lot of times people will come to us saying, hey, I think I want to get ready to sell. After working with us for a period of time, they're like, this is actually fun. I don't want to sell. I want to hold on to this thing. I want to keep doing it. And that's great. The funny thing is I'm a Gen Xer, And Gen Xers are trying to figure out the fastest path to retire, to get out and move on from there. So it's a little different. Like they're a little bit more laser intentional about, hey, I'm going to get out of that. And then the millennials, what I've seen of millennials, I mean, they're very savvy business people. Mm-hmm. They recognize it's an asset and they see it as something to fund a lifestyle. And so if they keep it going or they decide to sell it, that's fine. And, and I don't mean to stereotype and overgeneralize, but those are just kind of some of the things that we see. There's generational differences in business owners.
Yeah, I'm also a Gen Xer, but for me, I don't have a TikTok account, but I know somehow I'm going to strike it big on TikTok. That's all I know. I just
it is. You're going to get those TikTok videos going, Steve. It's your hotness factor is going to come in.
That's it. I just can't bypass that first level of setting up an account because I'm also a cybersecurity guy, so I know that's not good for me.
That's right. Yeah, that's you probably know quite a bit on TikTok.
Yeah, held back by the technology. Unfortunately that's what happens. So we talked a little bit about the owner, understanding that, those strong owner-led organizations, that the value is wrapped up in the owner because they're so involved with the business. But what are some of the other maybe big problems that business owners face when they're looking to sell their business?
The first problem, and going back to some of the things I said that affect it, is you don't know what the value is of your business. We run into this a lot where I remember I ran into a business owner years ago and he said, well, I think my business is worth some, it was like a six-figure millions of dollars business. I was like, okay, how'd you get there? And he was explaining to me how somebody else had sold, and based upon what they got, and that he thinks his business is just as good or better, that he should have gotten that, and that he had just signed this big contract, and they were going to take that contract. And when I look at that, and so by the time he was done, I mean, I think I want to say it was like $120 million. He had an actual profitability of between, 1 to 3 million. That is a unicorn level valuation that he came up with. It's just not reality, because, valuation is one of the big things. You've got to understand what your value is. You got to understand how it's calculated. You got to understand what your industry is. You got to understand what drives it. So that's kind of one thing that we see a lot. Tied up with that is when we get in, it depends on people's issues. We do a pretty deep assessment, and we'll see things such as, maybe there's some issues in the financials. Maybe you have financial statements, but let's say you have different departments and divisions. You can't split them out. Well, if you can't split them out, then you can't manage it. You can't show it to a buyer of which one's more profitable, or they're both profitable, or how does this work? So that's one issue that we've seen as well. Documenting processes is a big one. And this is not just an owner dependency. It's about being able to provide consistent quality in whatever it is you do. If you actually have written down your key processes and you train your people to it, and you have accountability metrics like a scorecard that measures, are we doing those things? Then you actually have a repeatable business. It's scalable and it can grow like that. Another issue we see is just like sales and marketing. I'm kind of lumping those together, but there could be all kinds of pieces involved with that. Is, a buyer wants to see the business is growing, and that it's got a history of growth, and it's got good prospects to continue to grow. And so if you can solve those things, that can drive value. If you don't, you'll probably see a hit. And there's different elements too when you just get back to that owner dependency issue. But let's also say there's key employees. Do you have key employees in the business that are going to be able to take over and run it when you're gone? Have you got them in place? Do you have succession plans? Do you have success plans for them? Know what they want to keep them incentivized and motivated? So all of these different factors come into play. It's just every business is different. So you may not have that issue. You may have something else. It just really depends.
Yeah. So I think I hear you kind of saying that, and if you're a prospective buyer, you're not just looking to buy a business as a business. You're looking to know that there's a secret sauce, that you've got processes, you've got the right ingredients and the right people. You've got all these other things that conspire together to make it a unique organization that's going to be successful without the involvement of one key individual who's, kind of driving everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. You have to think about, like, a buyer, you think you got a Ferrari. And so the buyer is just saying, It looks like a Ferrari. Can I see, is there an engine under the hood? Or is it, I won't pick a model just because I'm not going to pick on anybody, but let's just say there is an engine, but you got a little 4-cylinder, running in there. That's going to affect the value. So the way a lot of times that we'll explain it to folks is like, so if you want to go sell your business, and let's say you have an offer from somebody, once you sign what's called a letter of intent, then you move into diligence. So we've had this dreaded term, due diligence, and it is a very difficult process because the buyer is looking under the hood in every possible place. They want to make sure that if they're going to pay whatever they offered you, that they're going to get their money, a return on their money. If they find things, they start lowering the value they're going to pay you. It's called a retrade.
Okay.
If they find something, the hackles go up. I'm going to dig deeper because I found something that you did not disclose or was not known, and it affects the value. What else am I missing? So they dig deeper and deeper. So by the time you're done, you can see pretty significant drops in value. So that's why the process of going through and planning for that ahead of time and creating a business that can withstand diligence, that has basically addressed everything. It's like having the home inspector come out before you sell the home, find everything wrong with it so you can fix it so that you don't get a lower price when you sell the home.
No. You can't change away from your auto analogy because I heard you saying that every owner loves the idea of selling the business right up until somebody looks under the hood. So you're there to kind of tune things up before they pop the hood and get that oil change and all those other things in place because that will all help lead to a bigger payoff later.
I can switch analogies as you want,
right.
But let's keep on the auto. I mean, I think that's a good one.
I love being anecdotal. Wherever you want to go, I'll go there with you. I'm just the doctor. I'm listening, and we'll get there together.
That's right. No, that's okay.
So one of the points you made earlier is just that disconnect between the buyer and the seller, between the offer and the ask. I think maybe in the words you said. What do you see when you look through the buyer's eyes? What are they looking at when they're valuing the business?
The high level, we've kind of covered some of those points. What a buyer is looking at, and just realize there's all kinds of buyers, and a buyer has all kinds of different motivations about why they may want to buy your business. They could be somebody who's like, look, I really like this business. I would like to take over and run this business just like you are. I'm just going to step in and now create that. You've created that for me. There are companies that want to buy businesses like that to generate just cash over time. Sometimes you'll see like family offices. They'll invest in, small businesses. Let's say, for example, I'm just picking one. Let's say, they're all going to buy a bunch of landscaping companies because they just believe that that's a really good industry they can generate some cash off of. So they're just going to buy things like that. There are what we call financial buyers. Financial buyer is more of like the dreaded term private equity. But these are professional investors. They're looking at the business and saying, look, I look at this business. I think I can buy it at a low price. I can do some investments in it and I can sell it at a higher price. So this is basically how I'm going to grow value and return value to my shareholders. And then you have what's called a strategic buyer. And a strategic buyer is like a company that is saying, look, you are the missing piece, the missing link in what I'm trying to accomplish. You either have access to a really cool technology, a great process, geography, a set of customers, and you have value over and above what you do. So it's sort of that 1 + 1 = 3 sort of thing. People love to get a strategic buyer because you will normally get paid a lot more than what the market normally will sustain. Outside of that, you're probably going to get paid into a range. And so what's the buyer looking for is like, look, based upon what's important to me, I want to make sure that you're a good buy that's going to meet my goals. And I want to make sure that once I buy it, I know how to run it. It's going to keep producing the cash, and it's going to provide that foundation for growth for whatever I'm planning to do. So if you're the buyer, you got to go back to this point. You got to look under the hood and you got to look at everything. You got to look at corporate records. You got to look at legal structures. You got to look at tax records. You've got to go through all the financials, your accounting policies, going back in time, looking at your balance sheets, looking at, do you have any lawsuits? What's your legal status? What's the status of your contracts? Do you have contracts? I mean, and I can keep on going on and on. Mm-hmm. But these are the things, and it all begins first is, what is the buyer approaching you for? What is it they want? And that's going to drive a lot of the direction of where they're going to be pressing.
Now, if your strategic buyer is probably going to be offering you more, are there strategies or tactics or things that an organization should be doing who's maybe looking to exit in 3 to 5 years to try and identify what a strategic buyer might look like, or who might be out there looking for someone like them?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people would love to say, hey, I'm 3 to 5 years out. I want to get a strategic buyer. The reality is the strategic buyers, you can't predict them. They come about and it's just happenstance. But the one thing you can do, and this is the good news, is regardless of what kind of buyer, the process of getting your business ready and tuning it up so it's really humming along, number one, it's going to get you the best value. But number two is it's going to make you stand out amongst your peers. So if you do have strategic buyers looking in the marketplace, because you happen to have a really well-run machine, you're gonna probably be in the running. If you're in the wrong market, you can't control that. You can't try to predict that. So I never tell people to try to game and figure out who the buyer is going to be. Have an idea of what kinds of outcomes would be acceptable. Like, do you say, I would like to sell to a strategic or a private equity firm or a family office, or I want to just sell to somebody else like me, or I want to sell to another firm that does what I do. Whatever that is, that's an important thing to think through. But in terms of trying to figure out, it's going to be, XYZ company, that's difficult to make happen. People still try, and sometimes they're successful, but it's not a general strategy that's successful.
Now, coming from our world of managed IT services, are there things that buyers are evaluating and looking at that we could help our clients with related to, their technology or compliance, right, or other things like that? Or those pivot points for what the buyer's decision will be or valuation?
It will. In the context, when we talk IT and technology, that's a fundamental element. That it's not just email, right? These are systems that you use to run your business. So for example, go back to those key procedures or key documented processes. There's likely tools and technology underlying. And so are there ways that, as a managed service provider, that you're able to buttress and support those things? Where's the data stored? Do you have data, disaster recovery systems in place? If you have, a cybersecurity incident and you get ransomware, do you have a way to solve that? See, these are key risks to the business. And anything you can do that lowers risks increases value to the business. It's just really that simple, because then the buyer doesn't have to worry about investing later to solve that. Those are some simple ones. I will tell you, one thing that kind of crosses my mind these days, there is so much talk about AI and artificial intelligence. And I think that companies are going to need to be able to evaluate if they can use AI. There's huge questions on AI and cybersecurity, I think, for a lot of businesses. I was talking to somebody in the banking industry. She's like, I can't even use anything on our computers. But as we look at things like that, it has such transformative potential in terms of our work and operational efficiencies that I think it could be a real differentiated advantage and have value for people who know how to use that. But they're going to look to, the doctor to advise them on how to go about doing that, because no one knows really right now.
Yeah, that to me, that's a little bit of the catch-22 right now with AI, is that if you're not on an adoption journey and have some tools that you're testing or trying out that the whole company knows about, then you probably have employees who on their own are doing what they want to. To me, that's one of those fallouts of COVID, is that people became enamored with their own technology and just started doing stuff on their own. So if the corporation isn't providing those tools, somebody internal is messing with it. But
Right.
for the owner executive, you've got to understand the, data governance. You've got to secure things. You've got to have your users and permissions and policies and all those things locked down, which is a journey unto itself. So you've got to have that cybersecurity journey, related to privilege and identity as well, and data loss governance at the same time as you're having that AI journey, and just having that whole adoption thing. I think is people kind of get scared and do nothing, or they just dip their toes slightly in the water, which is probably the best approach. But there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. It really is just having a more detailed conversation to understand, which way makes sense. And, that's the thing for our clients is we can't tell them which way makes sense. All we can do is tell them, here's the impact if you go left. Here's the impact if you go right. I'm going to arm you with enough information to know which way is right for you. And, we'll help you get wherever you're trying to go. But in the end, it's your business decision.
I think that's great. And as you're talking through, and you're talking about, creating a cybersecurity posture and your governance models, data models, privilege models. The other thing that people may not think about is when you have those in place, it's actually easier to get other work. Mm-hmm. Because other companies know that you have done this and you have these things in place and you've got the certifications and you've got the teams. It just takes a no off the table for that reason. And I've seen like if you're a small business and you want to get a contract with a large corporation, as an example, having those kinds of policies, it's an effort, as you said. It's a burden. It's a barrier to entry for others. So if you can do that thing, and as an MSP, you're helping them in that process, you're helping them to grow their own business because you've just made it easier to go get some big contracts.
So what about, so we talked about how to, ways to protect the organization looking to sell by protecting their, like values or those areas of potential gap. What about to drive kind of that valuation or drive transferability? Are there things that you guys do there or recommend?
I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record because it comes back to the same things. Now, the question is how, right? Because in order to drive the values, a few things have to happen. So when I look to create a plan with somebody and just understand when we talk about a plan, I know some folks who say, hey, I'm going to come up with an exit plan. They come back with a binder and it's like really thick. Mm-hmm. And, the problem is that's really hard to implement, certainly in a business. I think instead, if you say, look, there's a set of tasks that we have to do and let's get through them in 90-day sprints. Let's see where we are. Let's pick the next set of tasks and work through those. Over time, that's how you begin to inflect that valuation up. But what happens is in the first year, you're not going to see anything in the valuation because you're busy making changes. And a lot of this is de-risking. So it will help drive the value a little bit, but you're not going to get transformative value till the effect of all those changes really goes through the organization. In terms of the tactics that you take, that owner dependency issue is a big one. So the first thing is I'll ask the owner is like, get a notebook out and over the next, week, I want you to write down everything you do. And we'll take a look at that and say, okay, what are the things you're doing that you can get off your plate? You can delegate to somebody else. What things are you doing you don't need to be doing at all? Let's get rid of those. And then what are the things that it's left? And then let's come up with plans for that. And if you start that process with the owner, then over a few months, then we can start cascading it down to the executive team because they need to do the same thing. We need to push things down as low as possible. We'll also say, look, we need to get a list of like, what are your key processes? What is your special sauce? How do where is this documented? Is it, Gene over in the corner basically knows it all? Okay, well, that's a problem. So it's things like that you would do. It's not sexy. I'll be honest, Steve. It's not sexy work. It's pick and shovel.
Hotness test.
It does not. It will get you to the hotness test, but it takes it. Some might say it takes a lot of work to look this good, right? Yeah. That's exactly right. It takes a lot of work to get there, and again, it just comes back to what situation is holding you back.
Now,
That's what we're
you,
going to work.
I remember you dropping a few allusions to financials and stuff. Are there specific things related to financials that that we haven't talked about that you want to bring up?
Well, not necessarily financials in the business sense, but one thing I did want to be clear about is when I said it takes a village,
Mm-hmm.
just remember the village isn't just for the business. It's also for the owners. So what I mean by that is, do you have a personal wealth manager? Do you have a financial plan? Do you have an estate attorney? Do you have an estate plan? Do have you got a tax strategy? Who's your CPA, your personal CPA? Do you have an attorney for yourself? You should go through that. And there may be other needs because on each side of that transaction, that group of people is going to be with you. And so you need to make sure you have those pieces in place. As far as the financials themselves, I mean, some basic things we always say is, are your financials auditable? Meaning that they're been prepared according to generally accepted accounting principles. If so, that's great. If not, that's probably an opportunity. Are your financials available by the 15th of every month? If not, probably need to work with your bookkeeper and accountant to get access to those a lot faster. Those are some very simple things. And then they can spill into all kinds of other things that might need to be addressed.
Gotcha. Now you bring up the personal side of things and, obviously, estate planning, all those kinds of things. I'm at that age where I've had several friends over the past 5 to 10 years exit and tell me a little bit about their journey. I always try to ask them stuff. And I remember one of them telling me, I had no idea there'd be so many charges. I had this valuation that I thought was perfect. And then after taxes, after all the things that went along with it, that number just kind of kept getting chipped away to where we ended up, a lot less than what I thought was a great number.
It's a really good point. And there are a ton. I mean, the sheer volume of tax strategies that people can do is just, it's mind boggling. And there are people who literally, this is their career to figure those things out. And you have to, because IRS changes codes continually and trying to track that. If you haven't put your tax and estate strategy in place when you sign the LOI, that letter of interest, there is very little that can be done. There's things they can do, but if you had worked with an estate attorney, a tax, strategist, just even 12 months before, the sheer impact will be astounding what you could do. And you can set up these interesting trusts like your charitable remainder trusts or donor advised funds and things like that allow you to maybe, hey, I'm going to give some of this to charity or this is part of my legacy, but there's different ways this works. And it's fascinating to try to figure out how they set these things up. But it really does make a difference. And it's a big bill. It's a big bill if you don't.
All I know is I would never go on a digital record of saying anything bad about the IRS. They've always been kind to me. They take care of me. They respond quickly. So anyone who's listening or has the ability to audit me or do something else, I've got nothing bad to say about you guys. You guys you're there for me every year.
So we went from medicine to tax audit. So physical checkup to tax audit.
Well, what can I say? Colonoscopy is part of a physician's trade. So you have to be ready for the worst when the worst happens.
Oh, geez.
So what else? Anything else on the team or surrounding yourself with the right people that you want to talk about?
I think we've talked about, having that personal team is really important. Your business team, you're going to have a business team as well, because you may have, your CPA, your for the business or accounting firm. You probably have a general counsel that you work with. You may have an M&A advisor that's just kind of monitoring the process as you go along and kind of when you're ready. And then you may have other consultants that you need along the way. You may need a marketing strategist. You may need someone who's going to help you with the operational processes. You may need, as I said, the general counsel, but maybe you're going to be doing some contract work and you need a contracts attorney. It just really depends. But I think as long as you have this mindset of, I'm going to build a team, around me of advisors who can help me get to this other side. Then just be open to, what advisors you need to bring onto your team.
I think that was one of the big things that, my associate was trying to say that, in the same way, like, some people think that all technologists are all the same, but, people who are, work on networks are vastly different than people who do physical security versus forensics versus cybersecurity defense versus, policy development versus, running cabling, all those things are vastly different roles. And I think that what he had said was that, as he was bringing it home, that he basically had to bring in all these various experts in their particular field to make sure that everything went right, but that there was cost from having so many other trusted advisors around him to kind of help pull everything together.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Not all professions are created equal. And you may, for example, maybe even your wealth manager is a wealth manager, works with other people like you in the industry, is familiar with specific details. Maybe when you need an attorney, I need a contracts attorney for this. I need an estate attorney for this. I need another general business attorney over here. I need an HR attorney. Everybody's got different areas of expertise. I do think that's always a challenge as a business owner, as you're asking yourself, well, I'll just go with so-and-so because I trust them. Just make sure that they are the right person for that. If they are trusted and a good advisor, they'll tell you if they really think they should do that or if they have somebody else that they'd recommend.
Now, you briefly talked about marketing. I assume that was like marketing the business. Are there any suggestions you have for the for the audience? I know sometimes you're a company and you get this call out of the blue from somebody who says, "Hey, let's work together." When that happens, what's kind of your advice to people?
It's a great question. And I'm probably like every other business owner because I do this and this is my business. And I get more inbounds on, hey, I can help you with lead generation. I can help your social media marketing. I can help your digital marketing. What you want to make sure that you have somewhere on your team, whether it's internally or externally, is you have the equivalent of a chief marketing officer. You have someone who understands the strategy. They understand the brand. They understand who you're trying to target. They understand what's the best way to target them. All the others are really just ways to execute different channels. So I always make sure I ask this is, do you have a marketing plan? And if your marketing plan is, well, yeah, I do a lot of work on social media. No. Do you have something written down that talks about what is your market? Who is your ideal customer? Where are they? What are their needs? What is your positioning relative to your competitors? And then how does that drive the messaging and the strategy that you have and how you connect with them?
Wow. We've kind of covered a lot of ground today, up and down, east and west, north and south. So as a doctor, I got to kind of pull this all together. It's time for your after visit summary. What's the one big thing you want our audience to take away from you today about our conversation?
I think that the number one thing is that you need to, that achieving a successful exit is not done quickly. And regardless of what you plan to do, start working on your plan. The benefits will start to pay. Whether or not you are going back to running the triathlon, whether or not you ever decide to run the race, you will simply be in better shape for it.
Now, is there a rough timeline on how long a successful exit typically takes?
Well, I think if there's different ways to look at that in terms of what we advise people is like, if you are planning to exit, give yourself a runway of at least 18 months to 3 years, because that's about how long it takes for you to be making changes in the business for those to show. Because the other thing I didn't mention is buyers look back 3 years.
Okay.
But they want to see a track record. You need time for that track record performance to come into being. So give yourself that time. In terms of doing a deal, it varies. I normally tell people, give yourself a year. Sometimes it'll be earlier. sometimes be later. It depends on the market, how diligent people are being about the diligence. Are they using AI in the diligence? I'm hearing stories of more buyers are using artificial intelligence for the diligence process and speeding things up,
Sure.
which is great.
Yeah.
But you just need to give yourself that time so that you can make the changes that are necessary.
Okay. I can see where it would be really helpful, just the ability to generatively ask questions across large amounts of data would be very, very helpful in that effort. What about prescriptions? It's the end of the visit. What kind of recommendations do you have for people out there?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is, if you haven't thought about what is your ideal outcome, go write that down. Go spend some time, take a break, go off to a cabin, get to a quiet room, go to the Starbucks and the coffee shop, sit down and start thinking about what is that ideal outcome? What does it look like for you? What does that feel like? And then the second thing is, if you haven't done a valuation of your business, get a business valuation. That's the first step to understanding where you are. So then you can do a get well plan. And then I think the third thing is just start assembling your team. Start building your set of advisors that you're going to need to get you to the other side.
Nice. I like it. So I guess that kind of brings us near the end of our conversation today. And hopefully the conversation got you thinking, wait, do I even know what my business is worth? That's a good thing. I think that based on our conversation today, most exits don't fall apart because of the deal. They just fall apart because the business wasn't ready. The leadership or ownership wasn't prepared. So building value isn't just about that top line growth or spreadsheets or, those kinds of things. It's about clean systems. It's about great infrastructure. It's about knowing that when someone does look under the hood, that they like what they see. And so, that's kind of what Mastery Partners does. They come in, they help you look at the business. At Fulcrum Group, we kind of help you come in and look at the tech. But all in all, you're trying to streamline operations, eliminate the risks that can knock serious dollars off your deal or delay your growth altogether. So at this point, if someone wants to reach out to you, Terry, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. They can either go to our website, so masterypartners.com, or feel free to reach out to me at terry@masterypartners.com. Okay.
And do you have anything for the audience? Is there anything free that you guys do? We only accept things that are free or less, but they have to happen now or sooner. So I don't know if you've got anything that might fit into one or both of those categories.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we always offer a free consult. Okay. If a business owner is kind of questioning and thinking about this, just give us a call. We'll help you sit down and talk about your situation, and that's no charge.
Okay. And what typically happens at one of those consults?
Well, we're trying to understand more about a lot of this conversation like we've had today. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Where are you in the business? How's the business? What's your market? Who are your key employees? Things like that. So what we're trying to do is begin to uncover kind of where we think you are in that whole process.
Okay. Well, that sounds awesome. And as for myself, you can reach me at our website, fulcrum.pro. You can also reach me by email if you have a question or suggestion for a future podcast, or if you'd like to be a speaker, the doctor at fulcrumgroup.net. All those links will be in the show notes. And if you're liking what you're hearing, be sure to follow or comment on our stuff on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you consume podcast information from, we'll be there. And with that, thank you, Terry. I appreciate all the conversation today. And the doctor is out. Thanks so much for being here. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.